Hello and welcome to Julie Hall Designs. My name is Julie Hall and today I'm going to share with you how I create this beautiful quilt block in the hoop. And when I say in the hoop, I mean everything. Your fabric is attached, the quilting is done, and you end up with an absolutely stunning looking quilt block both front and back, in two different styles, all done in your embroidery hoop. So let me show you how we create this block. So let's have a look at our requirements. The first thing I've got is my hoop, and I'm using the 200 by 200 hoop. And the important thing is the width. That is going to say what size your design is because the design is square. You need to hoop some cutaway stabilizer into your machine, and I like the poly mesh simply because it is soft and it won't make your quilt stiff. The next thing you need is a piece of embroiderer's felt. Now, embroiderer's felt is a fine felt product, and it's going to give the stitches for the satin stitching something to form around, but it's not going to add too much bulk. The bulk comes later when we do our quilting. We need our main fabric, which for me is going to be this lovely white fabric. We need our contrast fabric, which I'm going to use this funky teal colour. And then our last steps involve us using a piece of quilt wadding and a piece of backing fabric. Okay, now we're ready. Let's come over to the machine and get started. All right, so here I have my hoop with my cutaway stabilizer hooped up. What I'm now going to do is lay my embroiderer's felt in that hoop, as well as my main block fabric, which in this case is the white fabric. Now, I have cut my white fabric a little bit larger, and the main reason I've done that is because it's a scrap that I had left over. From there, I want to stitch colorway 1, which is going to show us exactly where the outline of the block is, and it is going to hold those fabrics onto the stabilizer. So the block that I'm stitching initially is the inner block. And by inner block, what we mean is that the fabric is sitting on the inside of the design. All right, now the second colorway is going to show us, and I'm just coming through and making my machine work a little bit quicker here. So the second colorway is going to show us exactly where we are going to lay our fabric down. And I can then take my decorative fabric, and I want these ovals to be sitting straight. So I'm going to line the edge of the fabric up with the edge of my actual design here. And then I'm going to stitch colorway 3 to hold that down. And once that holding down stitch is completed, I can then come through and using my curved tip squeeze scissors, come through and cut, and you need to cut quite close. You can see what a brilliant job these scissors allow you to do. Now, I would be keeping these excess pieces because you'll be able to use them, and this one comes from a layer cake, and you'll be able to use these excess pieces on an alternative colour where you do the decorative fabric on the outside here, and you use white for in the centre. Huge fan of using things up. Okay. So I pop my hoop on. So colorway 4 is going to satin stitch right around the design. And it's this satin stitch that's the reason that we put the embroiderer's felt on there. It's because we want that embroiderer's felt to give everything a really luscious look. Alrighty, so you can see we've now got the satin stitch completed. The next thing that we need to do is add the backing to our quilt. So to do that, I'm going to remove the hoop and turn the quilt over to the wrong side. Now what we're going to do is take our wadding, and yep, I realize that the wadding is larger than it needed to be. Once again, I'm using up some great scraps here. Let me just make it easier to see. So I've got my backing and my wadding. Once I've got those in place, and what we're looking for is to make sure that we are covering up the stitching points that we've got here. Once I've done that, I'm going to turn project the right way out. And lay the hoop on the machine. From there, I want to stitch colorway 5, which is going to secure all of those layers together. Now, if you are a little bit concerned that you haven't quite laid that out correctly, turn it over backwards, and what you can see there is I am perfectly within that design. So, I am now onto my decorative stitching. And I am going to do this in the same teal colour because I really want to take the opportunity to show you just how great this stitching looks. So I'm going to lower the presser foot and we're going to do the first of the quilting stitches. See there just how beautifully that is coming up. So that is the first part of our stitching done, and you can see just how gorgeous that is and detailed. If you wish to use a different colour on the inside, you certainly can. I'm going to go ahead with the same colour as I've got on there currently. And our design is completed. So let's come over and have a look at how that design's looking. So now what I'm going to do is show you very quickly how we create the alternate block. And this is the block where the fabrics all go around the outside. So the first colorway again holds down all of our fabrics, and the second colorway shows you where your first piece of fabric goes. We hold that down with the third colorway, fourth and fifth, sixth and seventh, and eighth and ninth. And so what you can see here is just all of the fabric being laid down. And no, don't worry, I don't work this quickly. This is just about making sure I have the time to show you both of these different designs being stitched out. Now, whilst it appears that this block uses far more colour changes than the first block, that's actually not true. It's really just about the different ways that we have to lay down the fabric. And you can see here we're up to the side now. And we'll trim away that last colour. So now that we've done that, we are ready to satin stitch around our design. The satin stitch is the most important part because it's the part that holds everything together. So remember, at this stage you have your cutaway stabilizer or your poly mesh, you have your embroiderer's felt, you have your main fabric, which for me here is the white, and then I have the decorative fabric, which is this beautiful teal print. You want to make sure that the thread you are using coordinates. It's okay if it is a feature on your quilt, but you just want to make sure that it is coordinating with what you are stitching. So once again, I'm stitching all of these in the teal colour. And as my satin stitch goes through, another tip when you're doing satin stitch, if the satin stitch is not covering, it is a tension issue. You need to go through and you need to change the tension on your machine. So this satin stitch is about 2.5, 2 3/4 millimeters, and it will easily cover up your stitching and make sure that those fabrics can't then pull away. So once we've done that, we take our wadding and our backing fabric, lay them on the back, and stitch colorway 11, which is going to hold down all of those layers together. From there, we are going to come through and begin the decorative quilting process, and because the main feature of this one is our inside block, that is what we are starting off with. So we are going to decoratively stitch the quilting, and then we're going to stitch on those outer petal parts. One of the things that I love is that with the magic of video I can speed this up, and this becomes an incredibly fast way to create a quilt block. You can see that the quilting that we're doing, it is not a triple stitch. It is much the same as you would do on a long arm quilter. It is a single stitch. The stitch length varies depending on where it is stitching, between 1.5 and 2.5 millimeters, just as a normal quilting machine would. So now we're up to, and as I call them, the petal or the outside pieces of this block, and it's a wave type pattern that we are using for this one. Once again, that allows the middle block to be the feature and the outer blocks to really just be totally held down. Sorry, I have to do all my trimming as I go along. It's just one of those compulsive things. Okay, so our stitching has finished, and I just want to pull this in close so that you can see the beautiful stitching that occurs within this design. What I would now be doing is coming along and trimming up my block and joining it in my favorite quilt as you go method. If you look at the back, the things that I want you to take note of is that there is none of that bulky, ugly satin stitch that some quilt blocks have. The way that I've put this together, with the satin stitch occurring first and then the backing going on, means that the back of your quilt looks exactly like any other quilt you might have. I've also done here the second block, and sorry, I'm just working out where the best method is to show you this one. And what you can see here is the quilting is different, and the feature quilting is now on the middle with something lighter around the sides. And what this does is this just gives you full flexibility for however you want to create your blocks. So I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you will give the Cathedral Windows Quilt Block a go. You can catch all the details on where to purchase this brilliant quilt block, and the set does include both styles, and it is multi-sized to fit everything from a 5x7 all the way up to, a 5-inch all the way up to a 9-inch block. So thank you very much for spending time with me today. Until next time, have a stitching day. Bye.